Hey guys, tonight we're sinking into the surprisingly salty, vinegary world of medieval nuns and their absolute obsession with pickled eels. You're not drifting off to tales of knights or kings tonight. Instead, you're pulling on rough-spun woolen socks against a stone floor so cold it steals your breath. The slap of damp, frigid air hits your face, carrying the earthy scent of mud, decaying reeds, and something unmistakably fishy. Your breath plumes white in the gloom. Beside you, Sister Agatha hands you a woven willow basket. It's rough, we've already slick with dew and the ghost of yesterday's catch. Mind the leeches near the reeds, she murmurs, her voice raspy from prime prayers. And don't let Brother Cedric's prize bream steal the bait again, cheeky thing. You trudge towards the ponds, the hem of your habit dragging through wet grass, soaking your ankles. The water isn't clear. It's a murky, peat-stained brown, swirling with sediment, disturbed by unseen lives below. You kneel on the rough wooden dock, its planks slick and smelling of wet rot. Dipping a hand into the water is a shock, bone-achingly cold, stealing the feeling from your fingers almost instantly. You fumble with a simple net, baited with, well, best not to think too hard about what's wriggling on the hook. Historians universally agree freshwater fish like eels were a dietary cornerstone across medieval Europe, especially near rivers and monasteries. But here's the quirky bit. Convent records from St. Mildred's in Kent specifically note nuns complaining about eels getting tangled in their underrobes during particularly vigorous harvests. And scholars still argue whether the pervasive damp and chill of these dawn fishing expeditions contributed more to medieval nuns' notorious rheumatism, or if it was the sheer risk-taking volume of manuscript copying they did later by dim lights. You feel a sudden, powerful tug on the line. Something strong and angry thrashes below the surface, sending icy water splashing onto your face. You pull, bracing your feet. This isn't just breakfast. This is the slippery, wriggling currency of survival in a world where winter is long, meat is expensive, and faith demands you find sustenance in the muddy waters right outside your cloistered walls. You wrestle the thrashing, muscular creature, dark green, almost black, coated in slime, into the basket. Its cold, muscular body whips against the willow. One down, dozens, maybe hundreds, more to go. The sun is barely cresting the convent walls. Your fingers are numb. Your habit is damp, and the faint, briny smell of eel already clings to your skin. Forget surviving a joust. Try doing this before dawn, fasting since yesterday's meager supper, and then tell me you'd survive a week in the 14th century. Pre-dawn light, thin and gray as old parchment, bleeds through a narrow slit window in your tiny cell. Somewhere outside, beyond the frost-rimed cloister garden, the convent's fish ponds wait, their surfaces stirring with the sinuous, shadowy shapes you're about to disturb. Your stomach grumbles not with hunger for breakfast, but with the low dread of the task. Slippery, strong, and surprisingly bitey, eels aren't the most cooperative catch. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see how far this eel tale travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push open the heavy oak door to the outside world. The hinge groaning like a disapproving saint. You lug the heavy, writhing basket back towards the convent's workyard, the weight straining your arms, the damp chill from the wet willow seeping through your sleeves. Sister Agatha gives a curt nod of approval at the squirming contents. River gold, she calls it, her eyes scanning the catch with a practiced, almost mercantile gleam. And she's not wrong. Forget visions of gleaming coins. In your world, this slimy abundance is true wealth. Why eels? Its simple, brutal practicality. The rivers and ponds teemed with them. They were astonishingly resilient, migrating vast distances, breeding prolifically, and thriving in waters often too choked or polluted for more delicate fish. While your noble cousins, in their drafty castles, might dine on venison or beef once a week, meat was a luxury you rarely saw. Raising livestock required land, valuable land the convent needed for crops, or grazing sheep for wool. Slaughtering animals meant losing future milk, cheese, or labor. Eels, they were free for the taking, a protein windfall delivered by nature itself. Historians broadly acknowledge that fish, particularly freshwater varieties like eel, pike, and perch, made up a staggering 20 to 30% of the average medieval peasant's protein intake, far exceeding meat. But here's the delightfully weird footnote. Some enterprising monastic scribes actually experimented with using finely scraped eel skin as a parchment substitute for less important notes, finding it surprisingly tough, if a bit smelly, when damp. Scholars still argue, though, about the exact nutritional decline of European river eels over the centuries, debating whether medieval eels packed a denser punch of energy and fat before industrial pollutants took their toll. You dump the basket onto a large, worn stone slab near the kitchen outbuilding. The eels writhe and twist, a knot of muscle and slime. Their sheer abundance is overwhelming, almost comical. It's like nature's fast food, if fast food was cold, wriggling, and occasionally tried to escape back into the pond. But this bounty comes with a ticking clock. Eel flesh spoils terrifyingly fast. Left in the sun, even on a cool autumn day like this, they'd turn foul within hours. That's where the true magic, the convent's secret weapon, comes in. Preservation. Pickling isn't just a preference, it's absolute necessity. It transforms this fleeting glut into year-round security. Think of it as medieval meal prep on an industrial scale. Without the sharp bite of vinegar and the kiss of salt, this mountain of eels would be useless by tomorrow. Sister Agatha hands you a heavy, blunt knife and a wooden mallet. Head and tail first, she instructs, demonstrating with brutal efficiency. Then split belly to back. Guts go in the pail for the pigs. Rinse clean in the trough. The work is messy, cold, and visceral. The smell of blood and fish guts mixes with the damp earth and wood smoke from the kitchen fire. Your hands quickly become numb, then slick with blood and slime. It's repetitive, almost meditative in its grimness. You think about the upcoming feast days, the long stretches of Lent where meat is forbidden, but fish is blessed. This slippery, messy labor isn't just chore. It's the foundation of your community's resilience. Those pickled eels will see you through blizzards, sieges, failed harvests. They'll be bartered for wool, for tools, for the very wax that lights your chapel. This river gold, messy as its extraction is, fuels the quiet hum of prayer, scholarship, and survival within these stone walls. The pile of cleaned eels grows beside you, pale flesh glistening, ready for the transformative plunge into the sharp, preserving embrace of the brine. The real ritual is about to begin. The sting of vinegar hits your nostrils long before you reach the dedicated pickling shed. A sharp, acrid tang cutting through the lingering smell of fish guts and cold mud. Sister Agatha leads the way, her stride purposeful. Inside the low stone building, the air is thick with it, a complex, sour perfume mingled with wood smoke from a small, constantly tended fire under a vast iron cauldron. This is where the magic, equal parts sacred chemistry and hard-won practicality, truly happens. The cleaned eels lie pale and glistening in baskets, ready for their transformation. But first, the elixir, the brine. It's not just vinegar and water thrown together. It's a precisely guarded formula, whispered from abbess to cellaress over generations, as vital to the convent's survival as the Psalms. You approach the huge cauldron where the vinegar base simmers gently, fumes making your eyes water. Sister Agatha gestures to barrels lining one wall. The good stuff, she grunts, tapping one marked with 3 crosses, ours, from the abbess's own orchard apples. None of that thin, sour rubbish the merchants tried to pawn off. Making vinegar was itself a major monastic industry, utilizing surplus fruit and careful fermentation. Historians note it was often more profitable per acre than wine. But here's the oddity. Tucked away in a York convent's ledger, they once traded 3 barrels of their strongest spirit of vinegar for a relic, supposedly a finger bone of St. Hilda, patron of Whitby Abbey, famed for its sea eagles, and presumably its fish. Scholars still fiercely debate the exact ratios of water to vinegar used universally. Was it a rough, strong enough to make you cough standard? Or were there precise, hidden measurements tied to regional water hardness and eel fat content? You heft a bucket of coarse gray sea salt, crystals crunching under your grip. Salt is wealth, painstakingly evaporated or mined, heavily taxed. Using too much is extravagance, too little. And the precious eels rot, a disaster echoing through the hungry months. Sister Agatha watches like a hawk as you pour, her hand hovering, ready to stop you. Enough, she barks, just as you think it's barely covered the bottom. Salt draws out the devil of decay, child, but greed invites ruin. Next come the secrets, the precious, whispered additions that elevate mere preservation to something approaching art. A handful of dried wild garlic scapes, foraged from the woods beyond the convent wall. A few bruised bay leaves, crumbled between her work-roughened fingers. A precious pinch of peppercorns, each one a tiny, fragrant globe worth more than its weight in saffron in some markets. A luxury splurged on only for the abbess's table, or the jars destined as gifts to powerful patrons, or the bishop. Stirs the humors, Sister Agatha mutters cryptically, dropping them in. Some convents, whispers suggest, used stranger things, dried nettles for green strength, a sliver of amber for sunlight captured, even powdered deer antler scrapings, though whether for preservation or potency against winter chills, no one quite says. You take a long wooden paddle, worn smooth by decades of use, and begin to stir the simmering concoction. The fumes intensify, a potent blend that makes your eyes stream and your throat tighten. It smells clean in a brutal, eye-watering way, antiseptic long before the word existed. Sister Agatha dips a small wooden cup into the seething liquid, cools it with her breath, and takes a tiny sip. Her face contorts, not in disgust, but in intense concentration, sharp enough to pickle a sinner's tongue. she declares, satisfied. Good. Pour it into the crocks. This is the ritual. The vinegar isn't just a preservative. It's a weapon against decay, against hunger, against the relentless entropy of the medieval world. It's sanctified by purpose, hauling the heavy, steaming cauldron off the fire. You carefully pour the near-boiling brine into large, wide-mouthed earthenware crocks lined up on a sturdy trestled table. The liquid glugs and splashes, releasing another wave of pungent vapor. The crocks themselves are heavy, salt-glazed, their interiors already seasoned by years of use, holding the ghosts of countless eels past. As the brine cools slightly, forming a sharp, fragrant pool in each vessel, Sister Agatha nods towards the baskets of pale eel segments. Now, she commands, her voice almost reverent in the vinegar-scented gloom. Lower them in, gently. Let them sink into salvation. You pick up the first cold, slippery piece of eel. It feels alien, dense. You lower it into the sharp embrace of the brine. It sinks slowly, disappearing beneath the cloudy, golden liquid. One by one, you fill the crocks, layer upon layer of pale flesh submerged in the convent's sharp, life-giving liquor. The smell is overwhelming now. Blood and brine, vinegar and earth, the faintest whisper of forbidden spice. This is where the mundane meets the sacred, where slippery river-dwellers become the convent's salted prayers against the coming dark. Your shoulders ache, a deep, satisfying burn, as you lift the first heavy earthenware crock. It's cool to the touch now. The frantic energy of the boiling brine settled into a potent stillness. Inside, the pale eel segments float suspended in the cloudy, golden vinegar-like strange, fleshy jewels in sharp liquid amber. The croc's weight is immense, solid, the weight of future meals, future security. Sister Agatha swings open a low, arched oak door set into the convent's thickest, oldest wall. A gust of air escapes, carrying with it the profound, ancient scent of cool earth, damp stone, and something else, the quiet, persistent hum of time working its magic. This is the heart of the convent's endurance, the cellar. You step down worn stone stairs, the air temperature dropping sharply with each descent, making the lingering vinegar sting on your skin feel suddenly crisp. The light from the single tallow candle Sister Agatha carries seems feeble against the consuming darkness, casting long, dancing shadows on barrel stacks and rough-hewn shelves, disappearing into the gloom. Wheels of cheese wrapped in damp cloth, barrels of ale quietly bubbling, and row upon row of crocks, just like the one you carry. Cool temperature of the earth to slow spoilage dramatically, a principle understood long before refrigeration. But here's a peculiar note from a Lincolnshire convent's diary. The nuns believed the cellar's resident spirit, a mischievous entity nicknamed Damp-Toes Ned, needed a small offering, usually the first slice of the season's new cheese or a splash of the weakest ale, left on the bottom step each full moon to ensure he didn't sour the pickles or sour the milk. Scholars still argue fiercely about the primary factor in successful medieval preservation. Was it the consistent coolness, the antimicrobial power of the vinegar and salt, the anaerobic environment of the sealed crock, or simply sheer dumb luck bolstered by ritual? The chill bites deepest here. You bend your knees, bracing, and lower the crock with a soft thunk onto the packed earth floor. The sound echoes briefly, swallowed by the immensity of the quiet. Each descent a plunge into deeper coolness and deeper quiet. Your breath plumes, visibly now in the candlelight. The stone walls weep a constant, slow moisture, tracing glistening paths down to the floor. This is where patience becomes the most crucial ingredient. The vinegar and salt work immediately, yes, halting decay in its tracks. Flaking richness that requires weeks, often months, of silent waiting in this perpetual twilight. Sister Agatha runs a calloused finger along the cool, damp stone of the wall. Time seasons them, she murmurs, almost to herself. Like prayer seasons, the soul can't rush it. The cold whispers to the brine whispers to the eel. You imagine the unseen processes happening inside those sealed crocks. The slow exchange of flavors, the sharp vinegar softening, infused with the subtle fat of the eel and the earthy notes of garlic and bay. It's alchemy, really, turning river mud and sharp vinegar into sustenance, into wealth, into security. Sister Agatha holds the candle high, its flickering light illuminating the neat rows. They look like humble, earthenware sentinels guarding the convent against the specter of famine. The sheer quantity is staggering. Each crock represents dozens of meals, countless days where hunger will be held at bay. The silence of the cellar feels profound now, almost reverent. This cool, dark space isn't just storage. It's a larder built on faith. Faith in the process. Faith in the seasons. Faith that the sharp sting of vinegar and the patient embrace of stone and earth will transform this morning's messy, slippery labor into next winter's blessing. You follow Sister Agatha back up the steps, leaving the crocks to their slow communion with the chill and the dark. As you emerge, blinking into the comparatively bright, autumnal afternoon light of the workyard, the warmth feels almost aggressive. The scent of vinegar still clings, but it's overlaid now with wood smoke, baking bread from the kitchens, and the distant chant of nun drifting from the chapel. You carry the profound quiet of the cellar within you, a counterpoint to the day's labor. The eels are safe now. Time is working for you. The first frantic act of preservation is done. Now you wait. And tomorrow the rhythm begins again. Prayer, copying, chores, and perhaps checking on the progress of salvation in the cool, dark earth below. The chill of the cellar lingers on your skin like a phantom touch as you emerge into the cloister garth, the sun now warming the worn flagstones. That profound quiet below is instantly replaced by the gentle murmur of the convent's daily life, the rhythmic scrape of a hoe in the herb garden, the distant clang from the smithy near the gatehouse. And above it all, the pure, clear voices rising from the chapel as sext prayers begin. You quicken your pace, the damp hem of your habit brushing stone. There's no lingering. Time is parsed here with monastic precision, a relentless pendulum swinging between the sacred and the strenuously practical. Your morning belonged to the eels and the vinegar's sharp sting. Now, the pendulum swings towards silence, ink, and vellum. Sister Agatha gives you a barely perceptible nod towards the scriptorium as she peels off towards the infirmary, her basket now laden with pungent, dried herbs. Your own hands, still faintly smelling of fish and brine despite scrubbing, itch for the familiar texture of parchment and the weight of a quill. Historians are unanimous about the strict herarium governing medieval monastic life, the rigid schedule of prayer punctuating periods of manual labor, study, and copying. But here's a charmingly odd detail from a Swiss convent chronicle. Nuns tasked with particularly smelly chores were sometimes excused from choir if seated near a window, lest their earthly aroma distract sisters contemplating heavenly matters. Scholars still debate, however, whether the intense focus required for intricate manuscript copying caused widespread eye strain and headaches, or if the rhythmic prayers and structured day provided a surprising buffer against such ailments. You slip into the scriptorium, a long, high-ceilinged room bathed in the soft, even light streaming from tall north-facing windows. The air here is different, dry, dust motes dancing in sunbeams, smelling of parchment, oak gall ink, and the faint, warm beeswax used to polish wooden writing desks. The silence is deep, focused, broken only by the scratch of quills and the occasional soft sigh or the turning of a page. Sister Eleanor, the aged but terrifyingly sharpened librarian, glances up from her lectern. Her gaze sweeps over you, perhaps noting the lingering pallor from the cellar or the slight stiffness in your shoulders. She gestures wordlessly to your assigned carol. No reprimand for lateness, just the silent expectation that you begin. You settle onto the hard wooden stool, the familiar groove worn into the seat a small comfort. Before you lies an unfinished page of a psalter, the Latin text meticulously inscribed, waiting for the vibrant hues of illumination to bring its borders to life. You dip your quill into the dark, viscous ink. The rhythmic scratch begins, a counterpoint to the distant chanting from the chapel. Beatus ver, blessed is the man. Your mind, however, is a traitor. It drifts not to heavenly virtues, but back to the cool, earthy darkness below. Did you seal that last crock properly against the north wall? Will the new batch of vinegar prove strong enough? You picture the eel segments suspended in their golden bath, slowly changing, mellowing. The image overlays the sacred text. A tiny, irreverent bubble of laughter threatens to escape. Here you are, copying words, praising spiritual purity, while your thoughts are steeped in vinegar and fish. That's the relentless duality of this life. One moment, your hands are slick with eel slime, wresting slippery sustenance from the mud. The next, they trace sacred letters with meticulous care, creating objects of beauty and devotion worth more than their weight in silver. It's ora et labora, made visceral. Pray and work. The work isn't just copying, it's checking the pickles. Later, after nun prayers and a sparse midday meal of bread, thin pottage, and a precious sliver of last year's cheese, Sister Agatha will beckon you again, back down to the cellar, candle in hand. This isn't about retrieving, it's about vigilance. You lift the heavy lid of a crock filled weeks ago. The smell is stronger now, deeper, less aggressive vinegar, more complex fermentation, with underlying notes of the bay leaf and garlic. You peer into the cloudy liquid. Is there a suspicious scum forming? A faint, wrong smell hinting at failure? Sister Agatha dips a clean wooden spoon, retrieves a small piece of eel. She examines it critically. Is the flesh firm but yielding? Has it lost its raw, translucent sheen, turning opaque and taking on the brine's pale gold hue? She might even take a tiny, cautious nibble, her face a mask of concentration. Coming along, she might grunt, or needs more time. Patience, girl. This is the quiet maintenance, the constant tending of the future. It's less dramatic than the harvest or the boiling brine, but just as vital. A single spoiled crock could mean dozens of lost meals, a dent in the convent's carefully hoarded security. Back in the scriptorium later, as the afternoon light slants long and golden, illuminating the dust motes like tiny stars, your hand moves almost automatically across the vellum. The intricate knotwork border you're outlining starts to, ever so subtly, resemble the sinuous curves of an eel. You blink, shake your head slightly. Sister Eleanor's hawk-like gaze hasn't missed it. She doesn't speak, but the weight of her disapproval is a physical thing. You smooth the line, force your thoughts back to interlace patterns, not pickling brines. The pendulum swings. Vespers bells chime, deep and resonant, calling you back to the chapel. You rise, your back stiff, your eyes tired from the close work. The scent of ink and parchment clings, but beneath it, faint but undeniable, is the memory of vinegar and cool, damp earth. Your day is a tapestry woven with prayer, ink, and the quiet, persistent assurance of preserved eels sleeping in the dark below. One sustains the spirit, one preserves knowledge, and the other, quite literally, preserves you. The rhythm is relentless, demanding, but within its strict bounds, there's a profound, if slightly fishy, kind of peace. The scent of beeswax and vellum fades as you step into the bustling outer courtyard, the air thick with the tang of turned earth and the sharp cry of a haggling merchant. Sister Agatha stands near the gatehouse, arms crossed, surveying a wagon laden with sacks of grain. Her gaze isn't pious contemplation, it's the shrewd assessment of a quartermaster general. Sister Beatrice, the convent's treasurer, peers at you over wire-rimmed spectacles, her quill poised over a sprawling ledger, 12 crocks for the tiles. And remind Sister Agatha, we need honey for the infirmary, offered 2 from the midsummer batch, the ones with extra fennel. The tiles will arrive next week, the honey tomorrow. The nails are all ready with the blacksmith. All bought, not with silver, but with patience, vinegar, and the sinuous bounty of muddy ponds. You touch a cool, earthenware crock in the cellar later, its surface beaded with condensation. Inside sleeps not just food, but agency. It's the quiet defiance of cloistered women who turned preservation into power, one slippery fish at a time. When the winter winds howl and the roads vanish under snow, the tilers will be warm, the infirmary stocked, and the convent's accounts balanced, all thanks to the alchemy of brine and time. The ledger's dry numbers can't capture the visceral truth. Salvation smells faintly of vinegar and river mud. You nod, the math imprinting itself in your mind. 12 crocks equals 1 dry roof. The transaction feels monumental. Outside, the rhythm continues. A cart from the village brings barrels of cider. Sister Agatha hands over a single, precious crock of spiced eel, reserved for feast days. The carter's eyes widen. He's just traded his entire autumn pressings for something his family will savor at Christmas. You witness the quiet power in this exchange. No armored knights enforcing levies here. Just the soft authority of preserved protein. Later, while copying a deed for newly acquired water meadows, you spot the marginalia, a tiny inked eel swimming beside the Latin text. Even the scribe acknowledges the true architect of the convent's expansion. The tile roof for the east dormitory, she states, not asks, how many? You know she means crocks. The abbess wants it repaired before winter, and the tilers demand payment up front. Sister Beatrice's finger traces columns of neat scriptets, owed, rents collected, and the ever-fluctuating eel reserve. Historians confirm preserved fish was a major monastic export, with records showing nunneries near wetlands often listing eels as their primary taxable asset. But the quirky truth, some convents used pickled eel as wages. A visiting illuminator from Ghent was paid 5 eels per day, plus board, for decorating a choir book, while a stonemason received a weekly crock for mending the chapel wall. The scholarly debate simmers. Were eels preferred over coin because coin was scarce, or because eels couldn't be devalued by a king's disastrous war? And beside her, gleaming dully in the afternoon light, stand 3 large crocks of last season's finest pickled eel. This isn't just food storage, it's the clinking currency of survival. You watch as the merchant, a ruddy-faced man with salt-stained boots, dips a finger into the open crock, tastes the brine, and nods grudgingly. The negotiation is swift, practiced. 2 crocks for the grain. The third secures a barrel of iron nails and a promise of seed wheat come spring. No silver changes hands. Here, eels are legal tender. Historians broadly agree that medieval monasteries functioned as sophisticated economic hubs, trading agricultural surpluses, crafts, and preserved goods. The account's room, tucked beside the abbess's chambers, smells of dust, dried ink, and anxiety. Sister Beatrice snaps her ledger shut. The sun dips low as you help secure the grain sacks in the storeroom. The scent of wood smoke carries an unusual edge tonight, not just the earthy burn of oak logs, but the dizzying, exotic perfume of cinnamon, clove, and something peppery and warm. Then, the servers enter, bearing large, shallow earthenware bowls. Even Sister Eleanor, usually absorbed in parsing theological nuances in her bread crust, eats with focused relish. This is the reward. This is why the cold dawn trudges to the pond, the messy gutting, the eye-watering vinegar fumes, the patient waiting in the cellar darkness, all condensed into this moment of communal, deeply sensory pleasure. The eel isn't just sustenance, it's celebration made edible. It transforms the obligation of fasting into an occasion, a ritual of flavor and shared satisfaction. You catch the eye of the novice across from you. She gives a tiny, almost imperceptible smile, her cheeks flushed with warmth and good food. No words are needed. The shared understanding hangs in the spice-laden air. This is why we pickle the eels, not just for survival, but for this moment of pure, uncomplicated delight. The spices, so precious, aren't just flavoring, they're alchemy, turning preserved river dweller into a feast worthy of saints' days. You mop up the last traces of the glorious, viscous brine with a scrap of bread, savoring the final, complex notes. The lingering warmth in your belly feels like a small miracle, a tangible blessing drawn from muddy water and sharp vinegar, transformed by time and tradition into something approaching joy. The fast isn't broken, it's transcended. The refectory hums with a soft, satisfied energy, a collective exhalation. Outside, the world might be cold and Lenten, but inside these stone walls, flavored by the convent's own patient labor, it tastes distinctly like abundance. The memory of this richness will linger, a golden thread woven into the gray fabric of the fasting weeks to come. A promise held in the cool dark of the cellar for the next feast days, divine, briny delight. The aroma hits you first, a complex, mouth-watering assault. The sharp vinegar tang is still there, the backbone of the flavor, but it's been transformed. It's mellowed, deepened, woven through with the rich, almost buttery fat of the eel itself, and the heady embrace of spices usually locked away in the abbess's spice chest. Historians widely document that fish, especially preserved fish like herring and eel, became the cornerstone of medieval Lenten and fast-day diets across all social strata, sanctioned by church doctrine. But here's the wonderfully weird part. Some particularly zealous theologians argued fiercely that beaver tails counted as fish, since beavers lived in water, creating a bizarre Lenten loophole for the wealthy. A loophole definitely not available to cloistered nuns relying on their ponds. Scholars still argue, however, about how strictly fasting rules were observed in everyday practice, especially outside aristocratic circles. Was it universal piety, or did hunger often bend the rules in peasant kitchens and convents alike? Sister Agatha, presiding over the serving with unusual solemnity, ladles generous portions onto your wooden trencher. The eel segments, months in the making, down in the cool dark, are a deep burnished gold, glistening with the rich, spiced brine. They nestle against a mound of plain barley frumenty, the bland grain ready to soak up every glorious drop. You spear a piece with your eating knife. The flesh yields instantly, flaking apart with an almost creamy tenderness, utterly unlike the muscular resilience of the fresh catch. It's rich, deeply savory, with layers of flavor unfolding. The initial bright vinegar punch, then the unctuous fat, the earthy garlic, the whisper of bay, and finally, the warm, expensive kiss of pepper and clove. It feels decadent, luxurious, a taste of abundance in a world defined by scarcity. It's divine, not because it's heavenly, but because it's so profoundly, earthly good. After weeks of gray austerity, it's the unmistakable olfactory banner of a feast day. You move through the cloister towards the refectory, the usual quiet hum replaced by a low thrum of anticipation. Even the sternest faces hold a suppressed flicker of something resembling delight, because tonight, after weeks of austere Lenten fare, thin gruel, root vegetables boiled to oblivion, hard bread, the rules relax. Meat is still forbidden, cloistered away like a sinful thought. But fish is blessed, celebrated, the watery gift permitted to break the monotony. And in this convent, the star of the fishy firmament isn't a majestic salmon or a delicate trout hauled from some distant river. It's the humble, ubiquitous, gloriously preserved pickled eel. You take your place at the long trestle table, the worn wood scrubbed near white. The air thrums with whispered excitement. Around you, the usual silence of the refectory is punctuated by soft sighs of contentment, the quiet clatter of knives, the appreciative slurping of brine-soaked frumenty, the lingering warmth of spiced eel, and contentment in your belly is replaced, a few days later, by a dull, insistent ache behind your eyes and a scratchiness in your throat. The damp chill of the cloister seems to seep into your bones, and the usual fervor of the morning chant feels like scraping sand against raw nerves. The medieval world runs on Galen's humoral theory, the belief that health hinges on balancing for bodily fluids, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, cloistered sadness, sometimes called the nun's disease. Sister Ursula might prescribe tiny lead doses of the spiced eel brine mixed with honey, believing its fiery heat could dispel the cold gloom of the soul. Stirs the black bile upwards, she'd mutter, watching you sip the pungent concoction. For weak lungs or consumption, a liniment made by simmering eel pieces in vinegar and strong wine, then rubbing the cooled greasy liquid onto the chest. You witness a novice with a deep cut on her hand being treated not just with yarrow poultices, but with a final rinse of diluted, pickled eel brine. Sister Ursula's unwavering belief in vinegar's power to cleanse and seal the wound against putrefaction. There's even a whispered remedy involving applying the slippery eel skin itself, inner side down, to ease the pain of gout, its coolness supposedly drawing out the fiery imbalance. The quirky truth lies in the margins of illuminated herbals, meticulous drawings of eels beside monkshood and feverfew, annotated with cryptic notes like contra frigidum, et hirdum, or ad corroborantum. It's a testament to the nuns' resourcefulness, turning their most abundant preserved resource into a cornerstone of their healing arts. Sister Ursula hands you a small clay cup containing a murky infusion, likely willow bark, for the headache. But her gaze lingers on the eel crock. Rest now, she says. Let the eel's heat do its work. Whether it's the willow bark, the intense sensory shock of the eel, the warmth of the infirmary, or simply the force of Sister Ursula's conviction, a sense of calm, if not immediate cure, does settle over you. There's comfort in the ritual, in the familiar, sharp smell permeating the room, in the knowledge that the convent's larder extends even to its medicine chest. The humble pickled eel, transformed by belief and tradition, becomes more than sustenance. It becomes a tangible expression of care, a weapon wielded against the invisible armies of damp, chill, and despair within the cloistered walls. Its power might reside more in faith than pharmacology, but in the quiet struggle for well-being, even faith wrapped in vinegar and eel flesh holds a certain peculiar potency. You close your eyes, the lingering taste of vinegar sharp on your tongue, and drift, not towards healing, perhaps, but towards a profound sense of being tended, one bizarre, fishy remedy at a time. Everything has properties: hot, cold, wet, dry, your chill, your phlegmy cough, classic excess of cold and wet. Sister Ursula, steeped in herbals passed down through generations of convent healers, sees the solution: something hot and dry to counter it. And what could be hotter and drier, in her learned estimation, than eel preserved in vinegar? Vinegar itself was considered intensely hot and dry, a fiery essence capable of cutting through congestion and rot. Historians broadly acknowledge the centrality of humoral theory in medieval medicine, influencing everything from diet to bloodletting. But here's the gloriously bizarre application from a nun's recipe book in Norfolk: a poultice made from mashed pickled eel and mustard seed applied directly to the chest to melt stubborn phlegm and rouse the vital spirits. Scholars still argue fiercely about the efficacy of such treatments. Was it the potent placebo effect of any intense sensory experience? Or did the antimicrobial properties of vinegar actually combat secondary infections? Sister Ursula spoons a small, glistening piece of the preserved eel onto a scrap of coarse bread. Eat, she commands. Its heat will drive out the damp. The taste is jarringly medicinal now. The rich fattiness clashes with your queasy stomach. The vinegar bite feels aggressive rather than appetizing. It's a far cry from the feast day delight. Yet you obey, chewing dutifully, the intense flavor momentarily clearing your sinuses. If nothing else, you shuffle towards the infirmary, drawn by the promise of solace and the faint, complex aroma of drying herbs hanging in bunches from its low rafters. Sister Ursula, the convent's apothecary, peers at you over a steaming mortar, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Ah," she declares, not unkindly. "The spring dampness stirs the phlegm. We must balance the humors." And before you can protest, she reaches not for a jar of honey or dried elderflower, but for a small, distinctive earthenware crock from a shelf dedicated to pickled eel. It's not just food. In Sister Ursula's domain, bathed in the sharp scent of vinegar, camphor, and drying sage, pickled eel transforms into physic. The applications seem endless, bordering on the absurd. For melancholia, that deep, the scent of old parchment and dust in the abbey's administrative office is thick enough to choke on. You stand stiffly, hands tucked into the sleeves of your habit, trying to project serene obedience, while the abbot's steward, Brother Anselm, peers at a ledger with watery eyes. Monks control the rivers, the weirs, the lucrative salmon runs, the visible, prestigious catches. The fish are beautiful, iridescent in the weak sun, destined for the abbot's table that very night, or perhaps salted lightly for a brief keeping. Its immediate, conspicuous consumption. Contrast this with your world, the pre-dawn chill, the murky ponds, the sheer, messy volume of eels. Their abundance isn't glamorous. It's overwhelming, a logistical problem demanding a solution monks rarely need to master on such a scale. While Brother Cedric enjoys the fleeting triumph of the catch, Sister Agatha is already calculating vinegar supplies, salt reserves, crock space. The monks possess the rites, the nuns possess the craft, the deep, ingrained knowledge of brines and fermentation, the patient alchemy of the cellar. The understanding that true power lies not in the momentary haul, but in stretching that haul across the lean, gray expanse of winter. It's a quiet, potent form of resistance. Denied the river's prime bounty, you mastered the art of making the overlooked, abundant eel last. You turned necessity into a sophisticated, vital skill. The monks might hold the deed to the river, but the nuns hold the keys to the cellar. And within those cool, dark vaults sleeps the true currency of endurance. They broker deals with merchants, collect tithes in silver coin or prime cuts of beef. Deeper isn't always better, she mutters, wading into the reeds, her habit hitched up. Look here. She points to a patch of churned mud near the bank. See the burrows, wintering spots. Fat eels, lazy eels, perfect for the crock. Her knowledge isn't written on vellum sealed with wax. It's written in the mud, in the patterns of reeds, in the subtle shifts of water temperature. It's passed down through generations of women who learned to read the language of the overlooked. While monks debated fishing rites in Latin, nuns whispered brine recipes in the vernacular. Their expertise honed in the vinegar-scented dimness of the pickling shed. The quirky truth surfaces in convent account books. Sometimes, nuns bartered their preservation services. Monks from a nearby priory, overwhelmed by a sudden glut of pike, would discreetly deliver baskets to the convent gate, paying in grain or wax to have the nuns make them keep. Tacit acknowledgement of whose craft truly held value when the snow fell. You kneel in the mud, feeling for the entrance to an eel burrow. Sister Agatha's words, echoing, "Men forbid, women preserve." The cold water soaks your knees, the slime coats your fingers. It's messy, humble work, far from the monk's riverside dock. But as you pull a thick, sluggish eel from its muddy sanctuary, you feel a flicker of that quiet power. They control the parchment rites, you control the alchemy of survival. The river gold might flow past their weirs, but it's in your cellar, transformed by your hands, and your patience, that it truly gains its lasting worth. The abbot may feast on salmon tonight, but come February, when the river is frozen and the larders thin, it's the nun's pickled eel that will sustain, bought not with silver or deeds, but with vinegar, salt, and the mastery of making the humble last. Their fishing is often sport as much as sustenance, woven into tales of leisure and bounty. Nuns, you get the muddy ponds within your cloister walls, the ditches, the backwaters, the domain of the humble, slippery eel. Yet, while monks boast of their catches, it's the nuns who possess the true, transformative power, preservation. Historians widely document the patriarchal structure of the medieval church, where male monasteries often held superior economic and legal privileges, including control over prime natural resources like rivers. But here's the deliciously subversive tidbit found in a nun's private journal from Ely. She referred to the abbot's prized salmon as swimming vanity, while praising the eel as God's humble, durable penny. Scholars still fiercely debate whether this division of labor was purely imposed by patriarchal structures, or if nuns actively carved out a specialized, indispensable niche in the food economy precisely because they were denied the flashier resources. Sister Agatha meets you in the workyard, reading your expression like a poorly illuminated manuscript. Men catch, she spits, not quietly, gesturing towards the distant river with her chin. Women keep. Her words hang in the crisp air. They catch the glory, you ensure survival. His finger stained brown with oak gall ink traces a line, granting fishing rights in the River Blythe to Abbot Hugh and his successors. The words are heavy, final, echoing the weight of the abbot's wax seal pressed beside them. Your request for expanded access to the deeper pools where the autumn eels run thickest hangs in the air like cold mist. Brother Anselm clears his throat, a dry, parchmenty sound. The rights are clear, sister. The ponds within your walls are sufficient for ... feminine needs. He doesn't look up. The dismissal is absolute. You leave, the stone corridor echoing your silent frustration. The lingering smell of the steward's ink, a bitter counterpoint to the ghost of vinegar and mud still clinging to your skin. The irony is as sharp as Sister Agatha's gutting knife. You watch Brother Cedric later that week, supervising monks hauling glistening trout from the river onto the abbey's well-maintained dock. Sister Agatha leads you not to the river, but back to your own ponds. The mud beneath your knees is a cold, clinging embrace as you pull the sluggish autumn eel from its bank burrow. Sister Agatha nods approvingly, her breath a white plume in the chill morning air. After years, sometimes decades, fattening in fresh water, they undergo a dramatic transformation. Eyes enlarge. In the scriptorium, Sister Eleanor curtly redirects novices from intricate illuminations to copying urgent tallies of salt and vinegar reserves onto durable wax tablets. The blacksmith's hammer rings out, not on decorative hinges, but on reinforcing eel nets and repairing the heavy iron hooks for the cauldrons. It's not a gentle warning, it's a starting pistol. Sister Agatha stands at the water's edge, watching the silvered surface. Below, the eels sense the deepening cold, the shortening days. Their ancient drive intensifies. The harvest isn't just work now, it's a race. A race against the freezing of the ponds, against spoilage, against the dwindling light. You take your place on the dock, net in hand, the cold wood biting through your habit. The rhythm isn't just in the liturgy. It's in the frantic pulse of the harvest, the heartbeat of the convent's survival, dictated by the silent, silver migration in the pond below. Even prayers feel subtly redirected. Less contemplation of heavenly mysteries, more fervent pleas for dry weather and bountiful catches. Sister Agatha moves through the days like a general marshalling troops, her gaze constantly assessing. She inspects the willow baskets for weak spots. A burst basket mid-harvest is a comedy of wriggling chaos no one needs. She tests the strength of the vinegar batches like a vintner, her sharp nod or frown dictating whether a barrel is deemed worthy of this year's prime catch or relegated to lesser duties. She clears space in the cellar with ruthless efficiency, shifting last year's dwindling stores of root vegetables and grain to make room for the incoming tide of earthenware sentinels. It's like preparing for a siege, but the besieging force is time, and your weapons are brine and cold stone. Skin darkens on the back and silvers on the belly, driven by an instinct to swim thousands of miles to the Sargasso Sea to spawn and die. Trading eels for essential supplies happens year-round, but the autumn surplus funds major purchases, repairs, land acquisitions, the precious spices for feast days. Failure means scarcity, vulnerability, a winter of thin gruel and gnawing anxiety. The rhythm is relentless. Dawn fishing in water so cold it steals your breath. The messy, efficient slaughter on the stone slab. Mass autumn exodus from rivers and ponds makes them vulnerable, concentrated, and crucially, fat. Fat means better preservation, richer flavor, more calories to sustain through winter. Missing this window isn't an inconvenience, it's potential disaster. But here's the quirky, almost animistic belief recorded in a nun's diary from Suffolk. They swore the eels swam against the current more vigorously, just before a hard frost, interpreting it as the fish fighting the ice demon. Sisters would watch the ponds like anxious farmers, scanning the sky, becoming amateur theological meteorologists. Scholars still fiercely debate, however, whether subtle medieval climate shifts, the so-called medieval warm period, or the onset of the Little Ice Age, caused measurable changes in the timing or intensity of these autumn eel runs, impacting food security across whole regions. Did warmer autumns mean later migrations, throwing convent schedules into chaos? Or did colder snaps trap eels earlier, making the harvest a frantic, icy scramble? This moment, this precise, damp, earthy moment, isn't random. It's dictated by a rhythm deeper than the divine office, more ancient than the convent walls, the pulse of the seasons. Your entire year, the very security of your community, hinges on the success of the next few weeks. Autumn isn't just a change in leaf color here. It's the frantic, vital crescendo of the eel harvest. You feel it in the frantic energy buzzing beneath the convent's usual calm. The way conversations pivot towards vinegar stores, salt barrels, and the ominous state of Brother Cedric's prize bream. The world narrows to ponds, patience, and preservation. Historians universally recognize the significance of autumn migrations for European eels. The famed silver eel stage. You feel the season's pressure like a physical weight. Every task in the convent orbits the impending harvest. The sheer volume required is mind-boggling. You're not just feeding the convent through winter. You're stockpiling currency. The sting of vinegar isn't just in your nostrils anymore. It's etched into the cracks of your chapped knuckles, a persistent, sharp perfume clinging to your woolen habit like a second skin. Inside the low stone pickling shed, the air vibrates. The liquid churns, thick and cloudy, releasing fresh waves of that eye-watering, throat-tightening vapor. Handling it feels like touching a strange, aquatic organ. As the filled crocks cool, their lids sealed with cloth and wax, the smell evolves. The high windows aren't just for light, they create a deliberate draft, pulling fresh air across the simmering vats, feeding the aerobic bacteria essential for vinegar production. The nuns understood airflow's necessity long before they understood microbes. They knew the sting was essential, the fumes a sign of potency, a weapon against decay as vital as prayer against sin. The smell, so overwhelming to outsiders, becomes the convent's signature scent in autumn, a sharp banner of industry, security, and quiet, transformative power. It permeates wool, lingers in stone, clings to parchment. You leave the shed blinking, the world outside smelling strangely bland, almost insubstantial. After the concentrated, life-giving ferocity within, the sting fades from your eyes, but the ghost of vinegar remains on your skin, in your lungs, a tangible reminder of the invisible, volatile alchemy, turning pond water and orchard fruit into the sharp, golden promise of survival. It's the smell of time being conquered, of decay held fiercely at bay, one potent, eye-watering fume at a time. The cellar holds the patient result, but here, in the vapor-filled shed, is where the fierce, transformative fire burns brightest. The aggressive, eye-watering punch of fresh boiling vinegar mellows over days and weeks in the cellar. It deepens, becoming more complex, woven through with the rich, unctuous fat leaching from the eel flesh, the earthy notes of wild garlic and bay leaf, and the faint, precious warmth of distant spices. Checking a crock weeks later is an olfactory revelation. The sharpness remains, the backbone, but it's rounded, married to the other elements. It smells complete, savory, deeply satisfying in a way that transcends mere hunger. Sister Agatha might dip a finger, taste the evolving brine, and nod, the eels whispering to the vinegar, now. Good whispers. The transformation is palpable, even in the texture of the eel itself. From the dense, muscular resilience of the fresh catch to a tender, flaking richness that melts on the tongue, infused with the complex aged temps of its preserving bath. It's slippery, slightly elastic, smelling intensely of the sharpest vinegar imaginable. With reverence bordering on the sacramental, Sister Agatha scoops a portion of this primordial slime and lowers it into the fresh, hot brine. It sinks slowly, a ghostly island in the golden liquid. Feeds the fire within, she murmurs. This is the true, unseen magic. The boiling initiates the process, but the mother is the engine, the living catalyst that works silently in the cooling brine, continuing its sharp alchemy long after the fire dies. You imagine it down there in the crocks in the cellar, invisible in the cloudy liquid, tirelessly converting, preserving, transforming. It's a medieval microbiome at work, harnessed through generations of trial, error, and sharp-tongued empiricism. It's a smell that feels paradoxically pure and punishing. Historians confirm that vinegar production was a major, often highly profitable, monastic industry. Orchards yielded surplus fruit, apples, pears, even grapes in sunnier regions, which were fermented first to wine or cider, then deliberately exposed to airborne bacteria to sour into acetic acid. This potent preservative was worth far more than the original fruit. But here's the quirky, almost mystical observation from a nun's marginalia in a Lincolnshire convent's ledger. They claimed their strongest vinegar batches always coincided with weeks when the wind blew steadily from the east, carrying the breath of the sea spirits who love sharp things. Sisters would note wind direction alongside vinegar strength, convinced of a celestial connection. Scholars still clash, however. over the primary factor in consistent vinegar potency. Was it meticulous control of temperature and air exposure, sheer volume of production allowing robust bacterial cultures to thrive, or simply the placebo effect of deeply held ritual and belief? Sister Agatha dips a small, battered copper ladle into the seething liquid. She blows across the surface, cooling it slightly, then takes a minuscule sip. Her face contorts, not in pain, but in intense concentration. Her eyes narrow, sharp as a penitent's conscience. She pronounces, satisfied, but needs more bite for the winter stores. Fetch the mother. Not with sound, but with a potent, invisible force. The volatile alchemy of acetic acid meeting oxygen. Great clouds of vapor rise from the simmering cauldrons, swirling in the shafts of weak autumn sunlight, slanting through high, narrow windows. It's less a scent and more a physical assault, a clean, brutal temps that makes your eyes water instantly and pulls the breath tight in your chest. This is where the river gold undergoes its final, fiery baptism before descending into the cool patience of the cellar. Sister Agatha stands sentinel, her face impassive amidst the fumes, a conductor orchestrating the transformation from slippery flesh to preserved sustenance. You stir the near-boiling brine with a long wooden paddle, the muscles in your arms protesting. The mother isn't a nun, but a thick, gelatinous, translucent mat floating serenely in a special stone jar of matured vinegar, the living colony of bacteria that transforms alcohol into acetic acid. The sensory journey doesn't end with the initial sting. The quirky truth resonates in the very architecture of the shed. The cellar's earthy chill deepens as you descend behind Sister Agatha, but it's the sudden, resonant clunk of a heavy iron key turning in a massive lock that truly shifts the atmosphere. She runs a thin, blue-veined hand over the salt-glazed surface of a vessel filled months ago. Her touchlight, almost reverent, yet utterly proprietary. Sister Beatrice, the treasurer, stands hunched over her wax tablet, stylus poised. Abbess Hildegard listens, her expression unreadable in the flickering light. It's the sound of security sealed, of order imposed upon the chaotic potential of hunger and want. Abbess Hildegard walks ahead, the key a heavy weight at her hip, clinking softly against her beads. The power she holds isn't flaunted, it's carried, a solemn burden. She controls not just prayers, but pickles. The cellar's cool darkness and its earthenware sentinels are an extension of her will, a physical manifestation of her duty to shepherd her flock through the uncertainties of the medieval world. The nuns might harvest gut and brine, but the ultimate dispensation, the literal unlocking of survival, rests with the woman whose keys jingle with the weight of preserved eels and the quiet, absolute power of ensuring there's enough. The abbess doesn't just pray for daily bread. She locks it away, crock by precious crock, guarding the convent's future, one turn of an iron key at a time. The vinegar's temps might permeate the cloister, but the metallic chill of that key is the true taste of authority in this world of mud, prayer, and preserved fish. The silent cellar below holds more than food. It holds the abbess's promise, sealed under iron and wax, that winter's bite will be met with the sharp, sustaining tang of carefully guarded abundance. She doesn't consult the ledger. The map of her reserves is etched in her mind. After a pause that feels endless in the cellar's chill, she gestures wordlessly to a crock near the entrance, an older batch, perhaps slightly less prime, but still potent. One piece only, Sister Ursula measured. not a refusal, but a reminder. Resources are finite, her judgment absolute. Even Sister Agatha, the undisputed mistress of the harvest and brine, defers. When she suggests trading to Crocs for rare saffron threads for the illuminers, Abbess Hildegard considers it like a general contemplating troop deployment. 1 crock, she finally decrees, from the common store. The saffron must enhance the psalter for Lady Eleanor's donation. Our future alms depend on its beauty. The trade isn't about flavor, it's investment, leveraging river gold for patronage that secures more than just spices. Abbess Hildegard dictates, her voice echoing softly off the damp stone. North wall, row 3, 6 crocks, midsummer batch. Row 4, 3 crocks, Michaelmas reserve. South alcove, 12 crocks, autumn harvest, unseasoned. Each crock is accounted for, its location and contents meticulously recorded. There's no room for error, no tolerance for lost jars. A missing crock isn't just missing food, it's a breach in the wall against famine, a crack in the abbess's authority. The quirky reality surfaces in convent tales. Novices caught filching a single piece of eel for a sick friend faced penances harsher than those for neglecting prayers. The crime framed as stealing from the community's future. Abbess Hildegard pauses before a smaller crock near the back. The spiced batch for Bishop Ethelred's visitation, she murmurs. Ensure the lid seal is perfect. Me cannot offer his grace. Mediocrity. Her eyes flick to Sister Agatha, who nods curtly. This isn't sustenance, it's diplomacy, a carefully preserved bribe wrapped in piety and brine. This alcove, the deepest and coldest, isn't just storage, it's the convent's treasury. Historians widely acknowledge that medieval abbesses wielded significant temporal power, managing vast estates, income, and resources, often rivaling secular lords. But the quirky, tangible symbol of that power, the iron key to the Pickled Eel Reserve. Records from Shaftesbury Abbey list the abbess's key ring separately, noting the great key for the fish store, alongside keys for the relic chest and the strongbox. Scholars still heatedly debate whether this centralized control stemmed from genuine concerns about theft or spoilage, or if it was primarily a tool of hierarchical discipline and patronage within the convent walls. Abbess Hildegard stops before a crock marked with 3 small crosses, the finest batch reserved for feast days or critical barter. She taps it lightly with a fingernail. This one, she states, her voice low but carrying in the vaulted silence, is for Michaelmas. See, it remains undisturbed. The command isn't just about food, it's about preserving status, honoring tradition, and demonstrating the convent's strength to potential patrons. Sister Agatha steps aside, her posture instinctively straightening as Abbess Hildegard emerges from the shadows near the north wall alcove. The single tallow candle she carries illuminates not just her stern-lined face, but the large, ornate iron key now hanging from a chain at her belt, nestled beside her rosary. This isn't just a spiritual leader. This is the keeper of the larder, the guardian of the convent's most tangible wealth. The cool, damp air suddenly feels charged with a different kind of quiet, the quiet of controlled power. Abbess Hildegard moves with deliberate slowness along the rows of earthenware crocks. Her gaze isn't devotional, it's appraising. You witness the weekly inventory, a ritual as solemn as Mass. Requests for distribution carry the weight of supplication. Sister Ursula approaches, kneading eels for a poultice for a sister with a deep chest ailment. The key's final turn, locking the heavy oak door behind you as you ascend the steps, resonates with finality. She embodies the tension. For her, the vellum is sacred ground. Every stroke should glorify the divine. Practical notes are for wax tablets, for ledgers kept in the administrative office, not for defiling the pages that hold the word. Yet, even she cannot deny the fragility of memory, or the sheer importance of getting the brine exactly right. The recipe isn't just instruction. It's encoded wisdom passed from cellaress to vital to risk. Being lost to a faulty memory, a spilled inkpot in the accounts room, or the death of the one nun who held the ratios in her head. The margins become a secret ledger, a coded insurance policy against hunger. The precise note, salt in mere 1 jachet cieno of Bien Sild's hand, fool, was met with near tearful relief. The quirky reality surfaces in the script itself. The Latin text is formal, illuminated. The recipe notes are often in the local vernacular, sometimes abbreviated, sometimes using unique convent symbols. A tiny eel drawing, meaning submerge fully. A crossed spoon, meaning do not stir after sealing. It's a secret language, born of necessity, woven into the fabric of devotion. Sister Eleanor's hawk-like gaze sweeps the scriptorium. You keep your head bowed, your expression serene, but your heart thumps a little faster. You recall the panic last autumn when Sister Agatha fell ill with a fever, just as the harvest peaked. Sometimes the sacred and the practical collide head-on. The knowledge hidden here is more precious than the gold leaf. It's the distillation of generations of observation, trial, error, and hard-won success. The scratch of your quill feels suddenly precarious as unfamiliar boots echo through the cloister heart. Authoritative slaps against ancient flagstones. Men in the king's livery move with grim purpose, their eyes inventorying fishponds, storehouses, and the low cellar door where Abbess Hildegard stands guard. The air, usually thick with vinegar and prayer, now reeks of damp wool and bureaucratic ink. The pickling shed stands ransacked, precious vinegar barrels toppled, spices stolen, the sacred mother bacteria discarded as foul jelly. Who'll repair the roof when the tiles crack under frost? Abbess Hildegard's face is ashen, but her voice stays steel. They take the crocks, she whispers at vespers, not the craft. Her gaze flicks to the scriptorium. Hidden in the margins of the illuminated book of hours, now earmarked for some nobleman's library, lies Sister Agatha's life's work. Burn Strangru, Keefhit, Cain, Egan, Teraz, Hit Ggd. The commissioners see parchment and piety. They miss the earthy wisdom woven between Latin hymns. That night, by guttering candlelight, you and Sister Agatha bury one last crock deep beneath the herb garden garlic-scraped eels in abbess orchard vinegar. Let the king's men starve come February, she hisses, patting down the soil. We remember the way. The scent of upturned earth and defiance clings to your hands as the cloister empties around you. The rhythm of eel and brine is broken, but the knowledge like dormant eels in river mud waits. Preservation was never just about food. It was memory, stubborn and salted against the tide of ruin. The commissioners ride out, their carts groaning with your future. Yet in the silent cellar, where damp stone weeps onto empty shelves, the ghost of vinegar lingers, a sharp, stubborn whisper against the sourness of surrender. Worst is the violation of the cellar. Abbess Hildegard's iron key hangs useless as men wrench open crocks, scooping pickled eels into sacks with bare hands. The sharp, complex aroma of years-old brine once, the scent of security, now mingles with the sour sweat of greed. Fit for sailors' rations, sneers a commissioner, wiping eel slime on his hose. You remember Sister Ursula's medicinal brine, the buried feast day reserve. The crock traded for next spring's seed, wheat hauled away like common loot. The quirky resistance persists. Novices slip tiny eel skins into the commissioner's saddlebags, where the rotting scraps will fester among their finery. A defiant nun in Lincolnshire sewed her abbess's brine recipe into the hem of a confiscated tapestry, ensuring the knowledge outlived the plunder. One commissioner unrolls a parchment, its wax seal glinting like a threat. By order of His Majesty, he announces, voice slicing through the morning chant. All properties and chattels are forfeit to the crown. Your fingers instinctively clutch the edge of your habit, where Sister Agatha's whispered warning still lingers. Hide the small crock near the north wall. The dissolution isn't just about shattered stained glass or silenced psalms. It's a knife poised over the throats of your eel ponds and the cellar's earthy promise. Historians broadly agree that Henry VIII's dissolution of monasteries ravaged England's religious landscape, with smaller nunneries deemed superfluous by Cromwell's commissioners among the first to fall. But here's the darkly absurd footnote from a commissioner's own journal. Nuns at St. Mary's, York, reportedly barricaded themselves inside the pickling shed, brandishing eel-gutting knives while shouting Psalm 54 until soldiers retreated, overcome by the stench of vinegar and female hysterics. Scholars still clash over whether nunneries were targeted for their perceived piety or their tangible assets, like those meticulously inventoried stores of pickled eels, valued at XX shillings per crock. Sister Agatha watches, stone-faced, as men prod her brine vats with pikes, river gold. She mutters to you, bitter as oversalted brine, now it's crown theft. The commissioner's ledgers reduce your survival to numbers. Ponds 3. Earthenware crocks 198. Estimated yield 5 barrels. Vinegar 40 stone preserved fish. They see commodities, not the patient alchemy of dawn harvests and cellar whispers. The assault is visceral. They drain the fish ponds first, ignoring the autumn migration. Silver eels flail in the mud, snatched by soldiers for a quick supper. Fear tastes like iron and spoiled vinegar. Without the eel trade, how will you buy wool for winter cloaks, vestments, and the abbess's key ring? Yet here, in the violated darkness, its roots fragrant with resilience. The scent of vinegar has faded. Every jar of pickled herring in Amsterdam, every barrel of Korean Jangyeojo kimchi, every grandmother's preserved lemonsol carry shards of the same ancient fight against decay, the same alchemy of salt and time. The nun's mastery wasn't erased. You touch the cool earth where the crock lies buried. The commissioners took your walls, your keys, your future, but they couldn't steal the understanding that the eels swim on in distant rivers, silvered by moonlight, their ancient migrations untouched by kings or decrees. Here, in this soft space between wakefulness and sleep, let the images blur, stone walls melting into mist, inked letters softening into shadows, the sharp scent of preservation mellowing into the clean, cool fragrance of night air. You are safe, the struggle is suspended. The world turns, seasons shift, and the quiet work of memory endures, gentle as a breath, steady as a heartbeat. But the quiet scent of turned soil after rain, of old paper, of time itself folding gently inward. Those nuns, their hands calloused from nets and quills, their days measured in psalms and brine crocks. They slip into the tapestry of history now, their struggles softening into the quiet hum of memory. Feel the tension in your own shoulders ease, their urgency fading like footsteps in a cloister after vespers. The pond's murky water stills, reflecting only stars. The cellar's darkness deepens, not with loss, but with the peaceful rest of work completed, of vigilance laid down. There's a comfort in knowing that survival, in any age, is woven from small, defiant, axe-buried jar. A recipe scribbled in a margin, a stubborn flame of knowledge passed hand to hand through the dark. Let the darkness hold you now, not as an ending, but as a deep, welcoming embrace.